All right, today we're diving into a philosophical text with a pretty radical idea at its core. It argues there are two realities, and the one you're experiencing right now, yeah, it says that's not the real one. So let's break down what that actually means. Right out of the date, the source text hits you with this incredible claim. The world as we know it just isn't real. And this isn't some deep metaphor. Nope. This is the literal foundation for everything else we're about to explore. And here it is, the central idea you really have to wrap your head around. The text says it over and over again. Our world is just a tiny, momentary speck of dust, millions of light years away. Everything you think is real, all your worries, your hopes, your problems, it's all happening on that single, non-existent particle. Okay, so let's get into these two realities. First up is what it calls a delusion, the world of somethingness that you and I think we're living in day to day. The source even gives your ego a name, and it's not very flattering. The minuscule momentary creature. It's that part of you that feels small, insecure, constantly afraid. You know that daily anxiety? According to this, that's just the creature talking, not the real you. And identifying with this creature, that's the root of every single one of our problems. So what does it feel like to live in this delusion? Well, according to the source, even time itself is just an illusion that only exists on our little dust particle. All our suffering comes from identifying with a tiny body, living in constant fear, and being trapped in this prison of our own ego, basically mistaking all that internal noise for what's actually real. And get this, the source actually puts a number on this delusional reality. It says that this world of somethingness, our entire perceived existence, is just a tiny, tiny fraction of what is truly real. The vast majority, the other 99.99 something percent, is something else entirely. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. If everything we know and experience is just a microscopic, delusional disturbance, then what is the actual reality? What's the other 99.99% made of? And this brings us to the second reality, nothingness. Now, I know that might sound kind of empty, but the source argues this is our true, fundamental state of being. The main concept to grasp here is infinite, timeless nothingness. Just try to imagine a state where time doesn't exist at all, only an eternal, infinite presence. The source is clear. This isn't some empty void. It's a vast, aware consciousness. And that's our true home. I love this slide because it puts the whole conflict side by side. On the left, you have the delusion, that tiny, insecure creature trapped on a speck of dust. But on the right, that's the reality, an infinite, timeless consciousness. The argument is simple. You are the consciousness on the right, you just think you're the creature on the left. And you see the same stark contrast when it comes to time. In the delusion, our lives are totally ruled by the ticking clock. But from the perspective of what's actually real, our entire timeline is just a brief flicker on that dust particle. Our true nature exists completely outside of it, in a state of eternal timelessness. Okay, so the big question, right? How in the world do you get from one reality to the other? The source lays out a process it calls the path of disappearance. And it's not about adding something new. It's about taking something away. This four-step journey is really the core of the whole practice. First, you have to become completely disillusioned with this everyday reality you thought was so important. Then you have to consciously stop identifying with that small, fearful ego. And that leads to the hardest part, allowing that small self to literally dissolve. Only then, the source says, can you realize the infinite being you were all along. And this quote just gets right to the heart of it. This isn't about self-improvement, it's about self-surrender. That minuscule creature has to completely disappear for the true, infinite reality to finally show up. The text also uses this really unique term, ognum. It's described as your ultimate state of being. You can think of it as the experience of what happens after that dissolution, that moment you finally connect with the reality of nothingness. It's life lived from that infinite perspective. Now, in the final part of this whole philosophy, there's a really fascinating twist. What's the point of this delusional dust particle in the first place? I mean, why does it even exist? Well, it turns out the dust particle isn't a mistake at all. It's a system. The source calls it a magical, mystical blue dust particle that was designed for one specific purpose: to create and manifest infinite consciousness. In other words, our entire world is sort of a cosmic incubator. So let's bring this all together. The final perspective is this. Your true self is that 99.99% that is infinite and timeless. This physical world isn't just a delusion, it's actually a system designed to help you realize that. Which means the only thing that ever really needs to change is your state of mind. And so we end right where we started, with a choice. The source material lays out two completely different realities, and at the end of the day, it asks you to decide which one is yours, the tiny, fearful creature on a speck of dust, or the vast, timeless, infinite reality that contains it all.